Good evening. I don't know, can you hear me, Liz? Yeah. We're live anyway. We are. Oh, nobody's watching us again. It could end up just you, me and Andy, which is fine.
It's fine because everyone can watch it later on.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people will.
Not even Karen's watching. Just slightly worrying.
I thought you said 8 o'clock.
Oh no, there's one person watching. Who's watching?
Hello, whoever that is. Oh, there's 3.
Oh, I'm stuck.
Send a message. Let's say hi.
Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, I'm having a mask failure, people.
That's what you could do if you attach it to your glasses.
Yeah, but then you can't get your glasses off, can you? Hi, everyone. I don't know, that doesn't look right. What's going on with that?
I don't know.
I think somebody needs to teach us how to put a mask on, let alone how to introduce it to our dogs and pets and stuff. So, good evening, everyone. We have Mr. Andy Hale waiting patiently in the background, adjusting his glasses. Oh, he's sitting up straight. Look at him, looking all professional in the background, unlike us. Sadly, we are drinking tea.
Yeah, we are
tonight.
I've got coffee actually. I'm going a little bit stronger.
Oh yeah. What have you got in your coffee?
Nothing.
Okay,
no Baileys.
So tonight,
Just the shopping.
As of well, I can't buy a bottle of Baileys every week for you. Every week. As of tomorrow, as you all know, or most of you know, face coverings, not necessarily masks, but face coverings. So you could do that as long as your face is covered.
Or you could wear your hoodie backwards. Sorry.
Face coverings tomorrow are compulsory in all shops. When you go shopping, you have to wear a face covering. This includes, I believe, as of today, if you go for a takeaway, if it's a takeaway sandwich shop and you can eat inside, then you don't obviously have to wear it while you're inside. And also, if you go in for a Costa coffee and you're taking it away, the government guidelines have been changed to include that, as they are classed as shops. So it's going to be massive changes for all of us from tomorrow. And I know a lot of people's anxiety levels have risen from wearing these things when they're out and about. So we spoke to Andy a few weeks ago about how do you introduce your dog, because we know why we're wearing these and it's really important that we're wearing them, but dogs don't understand. And suddenly your dog's out and, you know, your dogs are allowed into a shop or people coming in and out of shops, they're going to be wondering why on earth are humans walking around with these things covering their faces.
Because we live in a very dog-friendly area where dogs, 99% of shops, restaurants, and the dogs are allowed in. So, yeah, so they will see you putting it on and off. And
so we thought it was really important to have a chat with Andy, who's an animal behaviourist, about how we introduce our dogs to us wearing a face mask. And I like to call them now, we always say to dogs when they've got cones on, what do we say? They've got the cone of shame on. So we've renamed these to the mask of shame. So I'm going to bring Andy on. I know he's having a quick gin and tonic. All right, he's finished having his gin and tonic. So I'm going to bring Andy on and we're going to have a chat, ask questions. Karen, thank you very much. She's in the background, can answer any questions or point me if anybody's got a question. So let's bring Andy on instead of us gassing on. We don't gas this much when we've had alcohol.
I've not said a word.
Right, Andy, we're bringing you on. That's it. Here we go. Mr. Andy Hale.
Hello.
Do that again.
Say that again.
Your hands looked really big.
Yeah, it's my welcome jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
Welcome, yeah. It adds to the illusion when I appear. So he's like that. Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
So, massive shame, Andy. My first question for you is, our dogs don't care. Our dogs don't care because they get used to us running around wearing stupid costumes all the time, like mascot outfits, and they really don't care. But I can imagine that there's going to be some dogs out there that are going to absolutely freak out at face coverings.
I have a feeling that our dogs might actually not care about us, but might react differently to somebody else who's got their face covered. Because dogs, am I right? Dogs do what they look at your face, they look at you, they can't see. Am I right?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, Carol. Thank you.
Hang on a second, Andy. I'm going to set everyone's Alexas off in a minute. Alexa!
We forgot she was still playing.
Go on, Andy. We were like,
is that your hired help? Is it that lives under the stairs? Alexa?
Yeah.
Alexa, get the dinner on. So that's a really good point, Carol. So I think just a couple of things then. So some dogs are more sensitive than others. So some dogs are a bit more robust. They, Harley, our black lab, I could come wearing a gorilla outfit, it wouldn't freak him out much. He'd be like, okay, you're dressed as a gorilla. And I think one thing to bear in mind with our dogs, especially olfactorily, if they are able to smell us, they'll know it's us. And that's important for them. With somebody who they don't know, however, who has the face mask on, that might trigger some more of a reaction. And there's a couple of things about face masks. First of all, some dogs, you're right there, Heather, the mere sight of somebody wearing a mask might be enough to stress them out. But for most dogs, even your dogs, even if you walked around with the masks on, they might not freak out necessarily because you're wearing the mask. But dogs really rely upon reading our facial expressions. It's an extra element. We presume that the dogs are listening to us with what we say, but you try turning your back on your dog and saying the word sit and see how often the dog would actually sit. Quite often they won't, because part of that processing that they do when we train them is also about what we do with our body, what we do with our facial expressions, how our eyebrow raises a little bit when we give a treat, all these extra little things. So when we've got a face covering on, a lot of that information is not there for the dog. So it can be a little bit more difficult. And they can join the dots, it's the same with our brain as well. Our brain is designed to join the dots with bits that are missing. So a lot of those puzzles where there's bits missing and we have that kind of optical illusion, it fills in the gaps. It's the same for the dog's brain. So if it's the owner doing things, there's more there for the dog to join the dots with. If it's somebody that the dog doesn't know, then there's less chance for that dog to get potentially the information they need to feel safe. And that's why they might end up reacting. So it's really important to get our dogs used to face masks for many reasons. And even for us, even the fact that they can learn that they can still relate to us and have communication from us is very important as part of that process. Do you want to ask me some questions on these things, or should I just get on with the kind of masky stuff? What do you want to do? The masky stuff, yeah.
Just leading on from what you just said, a lot of people's anxiety is going to be raised when they're wearing a mask. Even if they are like, I'm only wearing a mask, I'm only going to have it on for 15 minutes, our anxiety is still going to be raised somehow because it's alien to a lot of us to do it. So the dogs will pick up on that as well, I'm guessing.
But dogs are amazing at picking up on our mood and our own emotional responses. And the more stressed we are about a situation, there's a good chance that our dogs will pick up on that, especially if our dogs are sensitive. If your dog's sensitive, what that means is that they're more aware of what's going on in the environment. Like we discussed before when we had our little chat before, 2 hours worth, we talked about, it's not going to be 2 hours now, we're going to be right, we'll be finished in time for Corrie. Is Corrie even on now? I don't know. Anyway, everything's about processing. So it's the same for us. We've had to process a lot of new stuff recently with what's been going on with COVID. Some people are able to process stuff a bit quicker than others. Even the face masks, the face coverings, once we start doing it for a while, it will become the expression we use now, the new norm. We'll have processed it more, and it will be the same for our dogs. We have to try and expose the dog to some of these new norms that they are going to be exposed to within our environment, in such a way that they can process it. And this is why it's really important that every dog is different, and we have to take into consideration our own dog sensitivities. If you've already got a dog who struggles around novel people anyway, it's going to be extra difficult for that dog if that person is not looking normal. There's something different about them. But we can help to habituate them to that by doing some of the work ourselves. So we may never be walking our dog with our masks on. I don't know whether that will ever be a thing. So when we wear masks, we might not be with our dogs because we're in a shop. But we have to recognise that other people might be walking around the streets with their masks on. So we need to start getting the dog used to it, habituated to it with us first. And I'll go through that process in a moment. But it's really important that we work at our dog's pace. So if you remember from our little chat before, and I'll say it again for those people who wasn't there, using these two analogies, it really helps us when we do any type of work where we're trying to get a dog to be habituated to something new. The first thing is, if you imagine the dog's brain has lots of doors in it, and we need as many doors to stay open for that dog to safely and calmly process what's happening. Stress is a big door closer. We all know ourselves, the more stressed you are, the less you can process, the less you can take on anymore. If you're already freaking out about something, I can't just say, okay, Heather, calm down, let's talk about it. You're like, no, I'm freaking out. I need to go away first. That's the first analogy. The second analogy is the bucket analogy, the good old bucket, which is about the stress system or the nervous system. So the empty bucket denotes the nervous system, the stress system, and the water in the bucket is the amount of stress that we're carrying or how much that nervous system's engaged. And the fuller the bucket, the more that nervous system's engaged, the less chance of any processing, the less chance of any rational, mindful behavior, the more chance of emotional and reflexive behaviors. So when we're thinking about introducing something new, like the mask, I've seen some stuff online, of people saying, oh yeah, put the mask on and walk in the room and scatter food. For some dogs, maybe they might be able to manage that, but for a lot of dogs, just seeing you, that first sight of that is enough to fill that bucket and close those doors. So you're already starting with a dog who's already can't cope and isn't processing it. So we have to do things bit by bit. We have to expose the dog to each individual bit so they can be right. Let's process. I can process that bit. I can now move on to the next bit. And it's really important that you take it at your own dog's pace, and that you can see that they're coping with it. So they're not showing too many stress signals. So that might be things like backing off, licking lips, yawning, trying to move away, trying to flee, growling, barking, the bigger behaviors as well. So the first thing to think about doing then is to actually just introduce the mask, just like that. So let the dog sniff it when they do have some of their favorite yummy food. So just by sniffing it, yeah, great, and give them some food. I like to throw the food to one side so the dog has a bit of relief to go and get it, and then they can come back and sniff the mask again. That way, if they want to go away and it's a bit too much, they can. But we just want to let them know that just by examining the mask, just by sniffing it, just by being around the mask, that's a really good place to be. When you're starting to, and whilst you're doing this, you want to always have a nice, light, jolly tone, because that's the one thing that will be a consistent as we move through putting the mask on. Because although they won't be able to see my mouth at some point, they'll still be able to hear the same tone. So it's that kind of we call it the jolly routine. It's like the jolly, silly kind of like, yeah, good job, nice, good job, good. Oh, that's good. That kind of nice, light kind of tone. You don't want to be doing this stuff in silence. You want to just add that extra tone in, because at some point I want to get the dog used to the fact they can still hear me, even though they can't see my lips move. So yeah, so introduce the mask, just let them have a sniff. You might want to do that just a couple of times and give them some food. Then when you're ready to bring the mask up to your mouth, you can just literally bring it up slowly like that. So just pinch it and bring it up. Yeah, there you go, some food. There you go. Bring it up. Yeah, there's some food. There you go. Nice, good. Bring it up. And just keep repeating it. So the dog has an idea that, okay, you're going to put something in front of your mouth. And remember, each step of the way, we're trying to expose the dog to the final result in little chunks so they can process each bit without closing those doors and without filling the bucket. If the dog shows that they're a bit freaked out, and there's some dogs, even just doing that, they're like, whoa, that's weird. I don't like it. So you have to think, okay, I need to slow that down. So you might end up bringing it to one side instead. If they can't cope with that, they might be able to cope with that. And then when you can see that they're coping with that, you can start bringing it to your face. Some dogs are so hypersensitive, anything outside their norm, their abstract norm, they really struggle with. So it's just little bit by little bit. Most dogs, though, you can go through this pretty quickly, you know. What was it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's it. So when you get to the point where you want to start having it on, and this will help for you, Heather, so you won't have to have that big battle that you had earlier with your mask. This is the bit I'm dreading now as well, because you see it on the news, don't you? All these politicians trying to put their masks on like this, and they're like,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I know. That's my hair for me. Oh God, my hair's gone now. Never mind. Is that all right? Good. Hair and makeup. No, there's nobody here. Never mind. On a low budget tonight. So the first thing we do then is we just hang it from the ear. And again, yes, there you go, nice food. That's good, isn't it? Nice, good boy, Rover. Nice, good boy. Take it off again. The most important thing is the food is being delivered when we're doing the thing, not afterwards, not as we put it on, but as we're doing it. So the dog's getting the food, coming back. Yeah, good job. So dogs getting used to having good stuff happen whilst this.
So when it's on, then
yeah. So so we start by that, and then we can just bring it round, and let it go. Yeah, good job, good dog. Bring it round. Yeah, nice, there's some food, bring it round. So I think you get the gist of this. We're just taking it in baby steps until eventually when we bring it round, we're continuing talking. So good boy, Rover, nice, good boy, Rover, well done, there you go, nice, and then come off again. So just building up. And then eventually you can have it on and then you could be talking. If you're doing this in your, I'll take it off now. If you're doing this in the, I was steaming up then, I'm not going to see it. If you are doing this, say in your lounge, and you get to the point that you've got it on, so there it is, it's on now. There you go, and it's on, and you're doing it. That's great. You want to go and do it in your dining room, and you want to do it in the garden, and you want to do it wherever. You just want to change the context. Right. And then you want to do it outside. You want to kind of do it outside. So you could be on your walk and then just get your mask out and then work through and do the same thing. Always keeping an eye on your dog, making sure, because in different contexts, the dog might be like, yeah, I can do it in the lounge, but it's going to really freak me out if you do it on the walk. I can't deal with that because they haven't got the right association. So at any point, if the dog looks that they're not coping with that bit, just come back a few steps. Once you get to the point of where you feel your dog seems quite comfortable, this is where it's important that if you've got multi-human household, different people in the household, everybody does it, different contexts. So you're building up that generalization for the dog. And then you want to ask any friends or neighbors if they could help proof it. So that would be where you might have your friend meet you on the walk with their mask on. So you can, at a bit of a distance, let the dog see them. Yeah, good, bit of food for looking at the person with the mask on. That's great. Make sure they're talking, because the dog will know them, because they're a friend of yours, I'm guessing. So you can start to proof it. So you start kind of having these cold trials, if you like, of thinking, right, if somebody appears with a mask now, what would my dog do? It's really important that, I know I keep saying it, but it's really important that we take things at our dog's pace. It's about them getting used to it, not what we think they should be doing. It's no point in thinking, I've been doing this 10 minutes now, and they should be getting it. If they're not getting it, then you've gone too fast. If you have a very, very sensitive dog, a dog who really struggles with anything that is a little bit different, then you've just got to take it little baby steps. What you said earlier, Carol, is very important. So the dog might do really well with you and really well with family members and even people that they know. But then that you're walking along, you turn a corner, and suddenly there is somebody who has other extra things going on. So that could be a stick and a baseball hat and dark shades and the face mask. All those things together could be enough to tip your dog over. And so at any point, if your dog does have a reaction to anybody wearing a mask, or if your dog has a reaction to anything, actually, be gentle, be kind, talk softly to your dog, and give them some extra social space, because that's what they need. So try and move them on, because it's too much for them. You need to add some social distance so that they can process a little bit differently. If you do have a dog who's very sensitive to things anyway in the environment, it might be worth getting a trainer or behaviourist along who can help you to deal with that specific thing. The good thing is the kind of work you do around general social or environmental sensitivities is the same kind of thing you do if the dog really struggles with a mask. I think a lot of dogs, from what I know, and just looking at my own inbox and looking at some of the forums I'm on, dogs are amazing. They adapt so easily. A lot of dogs are like, oh, the humans are doing something weird again. They do weird stuff again, because you haven't got the monopoly of weird, because we're all a bit weird, aren't we, in our own ways, and we all do some stuff. But I do remember a couple of Christmases ago when it was my turn to play Santa. And I just put the beard on, and Arthur went crazy. He went, I didn't think about it. I was just trying it on, and he just happened to walk in the room, and he had a complete meltdown. And that's, as soon as he smelt me, he coped again. But because his eyes kicked in first, so you never know with different dogs. But the key takeaway things are, your own dog, go at their pace, break it down. Anything you need to introduce the dog to, whether it's if your dog doesn't like the vacuum cleaner, if your dog doesn't like the washing machine, or whatever it is, we just got to break it down and expose the dog in these little chunks that we can keep those doors open and stop that bucket from filling. So they're like, yeah, I've got you doing that now. I can cope with that bit. What's next? Okay, the next bit is this. And then the next bit is that. And then just building it up little bit by little bit. And I'm sure that the dog, we find most dogs, the majority of dogs will cope well. And if they do have a little reaction when you're out, or a big reaction, remember to be gentle and be kind, because they're showing you through that behavior, my bucket's really full now, I'm really stressed. So we need to remove them from that situation as calmly as we can and add that social distance so that they can decompress a little bit. And we always think in our mind, right, my dog's been okay, now they've had this episode. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a thing. Every dog can have a moment. We can all have a moment. But if it is a continuing thing, then that's when you start thinking about, how can I help my dog cope better? And that might be getting a trainer or a behaviourist in who can help with that.
Okay. So the signs of anxiety, somebody has asked, the signs of anxiety, say that the classics are dog backing away.
Yep.
Licking of the lips is another one. Panting is another one, isn't it? Suddenly panting, ears down.
Yeah, so the more general ones is, like I say, panting, yawning, dilated pupils, salivation even, backing away, looking away. Ear carriage and tail carriage can be very important. Obviously, every dog's different, so you know what your dog's normal ear carriage or tail carriage is like. But normally when the ears go down and they're pressed, especially when the tail starts to tuck, they're struggling. That movement is a very important one, because it's one of the first things a dog will do, is that they will freeze, they might kind of stiffen, and they might try and shift away. Those are the signs that they're feeling a bit uncomfortable. It's tempting when you have a kind of a lower level behavior that isn't doing much, to think, oh well, I'll just keep going. But actually it's those early little signs that we want to stop at, because if you push ahead, that's when you would then get the barking or the running away or whatever it is, so it's better to catch them on those early little stages when they're doing some things. I've got a signs of stress in dogs handout, which perhaps I could get converted into a PDF and we can share it on the Woofstock.
That'd be cool,
because everybody could have that. But so you want to see the dog who's like, yeah, food. Oh, I like food, thank you. Have some food off the floor. Yeah, are you doing something a bit weird, right? Yeah, some bit of food on the floor. And you want to kind of keep that kind of thing going with the dog, that they're building up. everybody will know their own dog and what that kind of happy face looks like. Anything that starts to change on that dog's face. And the big ones are the lookaways, because they're like, oh, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this. They're literally trying to orientate away from it. That's probably the first sign that your dog might be feeling a bit uncomfortable. And just take your time. Take your time.
And don't be embarrassed if it's a really good idea to practice it out in public as well. It's a really good idea. You're down the park with someone with your dog. Just have a practice, and don't be embarrassed about doing it, because it's really important.
And you can always add it into something. So if you're out with the dog and you've got a ball, you've got a bag like a toy bag, and you've got your balls in it, it might be that you stick your mask on before you throw the tennis ball. So that becomes a predictor the tennis ball's coming out, or however you want to do it. Really, you can just do it at random times. But the more you do it in different locations, the more you do it in different contexts, the more habituated the dog will get to it.
It's kind of like us, isn't it? Some of us can drive on really big open roads, but put them on a country lane, completely different environment, and people freak out. So it's the same with dogs. Just because something is okay in your kitchen doesn't mean it's going to be okay on your driveway.
And this is the point. This is how the brain makes associations. It's the same for us. But during that processing process, it's very easy to attach something to an environment. So, okay, in this environment, I feel safe. I get it. That's fine. Literally a different environment, even sometimes a different room, the dog has to start over in that environment. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we have to go back a bit. So we might have got to that point in one environment, but we might have to go back to that bit in another environment for some dogs who really need to kind of see it, feel it, and experience it in different locations and different contexts before they really get it.
And don't expect too much of your dog to see.
Well, I think we should get that put on a t-shirt, period. I think that's a really good thing to bear in mind anyway, because interestingly, two of the main things for us as behaviourists and trainers is managing expectations and changing people's narratives on their dog. That's the most important thing. We call it, there's a name for it actually, which is Lassie syndrome. Lassie syndrome is what we call it. And that is based upon, obviously, the Lassie character from back along, but it's based upon the media's representation of dogs and animals in general, really. But especially Lassie, who could have this, she could do anything. She had a sixth sense with the owner and all this kind of stuff. And we have this expectation that our dogs are going to be like that. Some people, they are lucky, they do get a dog like that who kind of just goes with it and everything else. But most dogs, they're quite hard work initially, because we've got to teach them a lot. They have to learn to deal with a lot. The human world's crazy enough for us, let alone for our dogs.
I can promise you none of our crew would come and tell anybody that we were stuck down a well. I can promise you that. They'd come in and go, "Oh, you're here. Have you got any treats?" But that would be it.
Even Carol might call at the offie on the way through before she gets help. You never know.
Probably. She probably would. She'll probably phone somebody and say, "Do you fancy a quick drink? H is out of the way."
H is down the well.
Yeah. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to mention on that. So so it is about that, knowing your own dog, doing it gradually, proofing it in different locations, different contexts, getting friends to kind of help out, keeping an eye on your dog when you're out. You can always, if you have a reward marker in place, so even just a verbal marker like yes, so your dog knows that yes means that food's going to appear on the floor. When you're out walking anyway, you can continue this work even with people that are out and about. So you're just walking along. As soon as your dog clocks somebody with a mask on, yes, and they're like, "Oh, I just looked at that person with a face cover on, and I got food on the floor." So you can continue that kind of thing. The dogs don't have to. It's not like they're going to have to go off and be friends with all these novel, strange, masked people.
I do wonder how police dogs are going to cope.
Police dogs, yeah.
People running around with masks on. Buddy.
Yeah. I think that they'll have to wear striped masks.
Yeah, that's true. Striped bag.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, I think
that's brilliant. So literally, show the mask, let them sniff it. I haven't got to sniff it. Then you can do that.
Yeah.
Treat until they're comfortable with that, and then you can progress to the ear hanging, and then stop laughing at me. And then from the ear hanging, the cover away, treat,
Yeah.
Get that. And then the full mask on. But at any stage, if your dog is getting a bit stressed, go back a few steps and start again.
Yeah, and some dogs you'll be able to kind of whiz through that in one session probably. Other dogs you've got to build it up, and remember to keep talking to them in that happy tone, because that's the one connection they can have. Even when they start to lose that bit of your face, they can still hear you talking, and that's very important.
And don't just do it. Go on then, you can speak. I'll allow you.
If you've got a household where we've got 3 very different dogs, would you do it with all 3 of the dogs at the same time, or would you do it individually?
That's a really good point, and I think it's always good to do it individually because it depends on your mix of dogs really. But every dog learns differently. Every dog has their own way of doing things, and also if some dogs, because they're with their brothers and sisters, they cope better. But when they're on their own, they find it a bit more difficult, and they might be in a situation when they're on their own and they're faced with a mask. So the other thing as well is if you've got 2 or 3 dogs, looking out for some of those little micro signals that might show that they're starting to get a little bit uneasy about it. You might miss them. So no, I think that's a really brilliant question. Again, Carol, thank you very much. It's worth doing. Yeah.
Is that a dog in the background?
That was a dog. That was Arthur. Do you want to see him?
Yeah.
Hello, Arthur.
Hello, Arthur.
He's like, what's going on? What's going on? He's backed off because I keep putting a mask on. Yeah, so I think that's a good question. So yeah, definitely do it with your individual dogs, and then do it together with them all together, so they just get used to it. It is a new thing, but I'm pretty sure that most dogs will cope quite well. But anything we can do just to help them, because we all know how important socialization is for dogs, and socialization isn't just about puppies, it's an ongoing thing really. But what we try and do in that very early informative time for dogs is to expose them to as many things that they're going to come across in their adult life, and let the brain, while it's in that very receptive state to new things, is to get that information and put it in and have positive exposure. But no dog will have had any kind of point of reference for people wearing masks. It's very difficult. My main concern is for those dogs that already find the outside world a bit tricky already. And I've got clients getting in touch with me who I haven't spoken to for maybe a year or 2, who have managed to get to the point where they can help their dog to be more, to cope better and be a bit more resilient out in the environment, who have now come back a bit, both because of lockdown, because lockdown was good for a bit because there was hardly anything out, but then suddenly the tap got turned on and then there's tons of stuff again. But also face masks, it's just an extra level really, which kind of sets the dog back a little bit. But so that is the big concern, the dogs who are already a little bit sensitive. But
yeah, because I was going to say, because dogs, all animals really, even wildlife, have had an awful lot thrown at them as well this year, as well as us coping with stuff. And as you say, dogs and everything, everyone was in lockdown, and we discussed last time about coming out of lockdown and how the dog's going to cope. And then suddenly, there's another thing being thrown at them. We understand it because we know what's happening. So it must be a very strange time for them as well, really, because we've gone from being crazy human beings to like ultra crazy human beings at the moment.
Yeah, and I think when you think how important routine and environmental norms are to dogs, that everything's changed really. And one of the things that we have as a human, which is helps us, is the fact that we can rationalize as part of that processing process. But even when we can do that, we can still find it difficult. I think with the bigger crisis actually over the COVID moving forwards is going to be the mental and emotional health issues that are going to come. We're already starting to see that now, and of course, the services that were there historically to support people with mental and emotional health issues was already stretched. It was already underfunded. When I was involved in that side of things, we had a lot more money in the system. We just don't now. But moving forwards, we're going to have a lot more people who are going to need that on many levels. I think one of the things about the COVID, it shined a light on the cracks that were already there for many people, whether that was in their relationships, whether it's in their own issues, whether it's in their own self-esteem or their own confidence to do their job, or all the kind of things that might have been just there before that wasn't at the fore necessarily, but was there in the background. So there's a lot for all of us to process. I think we've all had a big period of reflection during this.
I mean, as I spoke to you weeks ago now, with obviously, well, there's no other way to say it, with my brain injury, it's been quite difficult in a way for me, to the point where I didn't really want to go out the house, did I? I just didn't, because a bit like a dog, everyone always says that my brain's half dog, but I rely very much on routine. So when that routine is taken suddenly away, I've gone from working full time to being a housewife in a very quick, space of time, and my routine was completely turned upside down. And I'm also quite anxious about face masks, not because them being uncomfortable to wear or anything, but I also rely quite a lot on facial expressions to help me understand situations. So, but I can rationalize all of that, as you said, as a human being. I can speak to Carol and go, really struggling with it. Went shopping the other day, really struggled with it. There was just too many people. My routine of the arrows in the shop had suddenly all changed and stuff like that. And now I am going to go out to the shops tomorrow. I'm determined to, so that I can experience the mask and seeing other people and trying to interact with that. But I really feel for animals, for dogs, because they haven't got somebody saying this is why you're doing it. And for them to turn around and go, yeah, okay. So I kind of get it when you were saying about facial expressions and everything. It's really, really hard not to have that.
Thanks for sharing that, Heather, because I think that's, it just goes to show, even for us humans, when things have either happened to us or are happening to us, or that our brain isn't got the kind of abstract normal filters that the bulk of the population take for granted are there, that little changes in life can be very overwhelming. And my big kind of interest, my big bias is about processing for dogs. And it's really interesting looking at the latest neuroscience and how things are moving on there. But we take for granted as humans that over 95% of what we process through that sensory integration, we do subconsciously. It just happens. And if you have experienced a brain injury, if you have learning challenges of some sort, even if you are an anxious person, that drops a lot. So you're suddenly more aware and more affected of things, and it takes more time. And if you aren't given the time, or the environment moves too fast for you, you can get overwhelmed really quickly. When we think about dogs, they have nowhere near the same subconscious processing that we take for granted, because we've bred them to be aware of stuff. So when you think of these poor collies who are aware of everything, and when you think about how their nervous system just engages like that, it is like having an autistic person in a way. There is some similarities there about having those sensory filters just not working properly, that little things can change hugely. I know with Arthur, who you just met here on the couch there, when he was younger, especially, he's nearly 10 now, so he copes much better. But in his early days, if everything was just as he needed it to be, that was fine. One little thing out of place, it could really freak him out. And this is my concern when we think about masks and also changes in routine and people suddenly being home, which we discussed before, could be a positive thing for some dogs, but for other dogs, it's too much, because they used to get respite from the kids going to school. They used to get respite from people going to work. But also then the changes in the dynamic, even the changes in the social dynamic in the household, when different parts of the family are all under the same roof all of a sudden, which doesn't happen very often, apart from maybe at leisure time weekends and holidays, where it's a different dynamic. Dogs will pick up on that. Dogs just pick up on so many things, and I think you sharing your experiences there is important, because even as humans, we can have episodes in our life where we don't cope so well. People around us who are in that abstract normal, or are just kind of just processing things in a normal way, this is where the term, and this is why I don't like it at all, the term overreaction comes from. That's why I don't like it with dogs either. Oh, well, you know, as a human, you might say, oh, she's overreacting. It's just not helpful, because for me as a calm bystander, I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? But that's not the experience of the person who is struggling. Because my mother, especially when she's not with us anymore, but as she got older and she struggled with a bit of cognitive decline, shifting Sainsbury's round, which they do every so often, really, really pissed her off. But it freaked her out. She couldn't. It was really hard for her, because she just got used to things being where she needed them to be. So the processing side of stuff is really important. And coming back to the face mask, that's why we just take it little bit by little bit. So our own dogs can think, I've processed that bit, I get that bit. And it's the same with what we do with dogs who struggle at the vets or struggle at the groomers. And we do husbandry training with the dog, and we get them used to being able to have some of the procedures that they might need, like having the bloods taken or having an injection or being groomed. We break it down. We think, right, I'm just going to start by introducing the clippers to you today, and they're not even on. And then I might introduce the clippers to you, but I'm going to make the noise. I'm not going to turn them on, but I'm going to go, and you're just breaking it down bit by bit until the real thing happens, so they can process each little bit.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Andy. That's brilliant. I know probably after Virtual Woofstock, we're going to come up with a list of topics between us to talk through. Once that craziness out of the way, I'll put a post up and say, is there any burning topics that people are desperate to hear your expertise on? Because you're an expert. Expert.
Oh, expert. Well, good. We can have a chat for sure. And I think, that'll be good. And especially if it's led by the audience, by the viewers, we can talk about things they want to talk about. And I can even, invite some of my other trainer buddies along, and people who do different things, whether that's a vet or a physio or a trainer or somebody who deals with specific things. And, I think that'd be quite cool to get them right. And Pet Remedy, well, definitely Pet Remedy. They're up for doing some things as well. So we could definitely have a Pet Remedy sesh. Because that would be good, and that would be very helpful for a lot of people. Good. Well, thanks for having me along again.
No worries. It's been brilliant. It's just really, really important, because I think we're all so much in this mix at the moment that sometimes little things like introducing your dog to the differences is helpful, really.
And the good thing is the same principle applies to anything that you need to get your dog reconditioned to or desensitized to. It's the same principle. Build it up, gradual exposure, keep those doors open, keep that bucket from filling, and your dog will cope better.
We just had somebody just said that one of his dogs was afraid, didn't like anyone wearing a hat, so he started wearing a hat around the house. And now she's fine with it, with anyone. So it's getting them used to something. If you actually realize what it is, that freaks them out. We got Maggie is with sticks.
Walking sticks.
I mean, we looked into her history. We know why she doesn't like doors. But she's getting used to it. And she's getting really good at it, because we just sort of let her come into it with us. We just leave the door up a little bit and let her push the door so she can come in. And she's great. It's like you say, it's great. What you say, it just all really makes sense.
And it's the breaking down bit. And interesting, just one last point on that about how dogs see us, because they process us as a silhouette primarily. And we've all had a situation where I live down on Preston Beach here, and in the winter when the dogs can get on the beach, Kieran might go down with the dogs, and I might come home from seeing a client, and then I'll realise they're down the beach, so I'll go and join them. Here, the dogs, I could be, 100 foot away. Because I'm stood still, they're just looking at me. Until I move, they're like, oh my God, it's Andy, because it's more about the movement. But the thing is about the silhouette, the dog might be fine with a person, the silhouette of a person. But if they are, but add a hat, it changes the silhouette. Add a stick, it changes the silhouette. So woman, fine. Pushchair, fine. Woman plus pushchair is more difficult. So we just have to step into our dog's experience and how they need to process stuff. And sadly, the more traditional way of doing things is to expose the dog to something to elicit the reaction, and then just tell them off for it. Because that's kind of what happens still a lot, sadly, with some of the more compulsion training, which is a bit like me making you go into the snake house at the zoo, Heather, if you don't like snakes, and then punish you for screaming. It's just not right. So we have to build things up a little bit like that. Yeah, good. Well, thanks very much.
No worries. I'm going to pop you back stage. Don't go anywhere. You can start drinking your gin again.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And we'll say goodbye to everyone. So thanks, Andy. I'll speak to you in a minute.
Thanks, everybody, who's been watching. Thank you.